Hello, 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 folks. How are you doing all today? I'm here back in my own little room, not with Aaron, as you can see, and not with Aaron's lovely Wi-Fi. So my deepest apologies if you get some terrible dropped frames throughout this. Definitely quite likely. And if the audio quality isn't quite what it ought to be. Do let me know if you can actually see this as well, because my Wi-Fi is so fucking poor. I also can't actually watch my stream live, which is a strange feeling. I can obviously see the encoded version on my end, but I can't see what you see, if that makes any sense. And if I did, I'd get some weird echoes that you would have as well. So please, I can in fact see it now. That's great. Hi Phoebe, nice to see you. I'm going to be talking about the BAFTAs today, folks. Now, as you might have noticed, if you're in the UK, the BAFTAs have already happened. They are continuing to happen as we talk now. I thought that I had the timings right and that I would be doing a live stream following along, watching it on my TV, which is set up just over here. I got it wrong by about 2 hours, so it's basically already started happening. But luckily, as I'm seeing from the chat, none of you guys apparently are in places where you can actually watch the BAFTAs. So that's good. That means we're discovering it as we go along. What I was thinking about the format for today would be that I would go through the winners as they come through, or as in the order they've come through, if they've already come through, and talk about some of the films that are coming along, that are winning, not because they are predictors of the Oscars. I don't think they are particularly predictive of the Oscars, the BAFTAs. But because I'm British, hi, I'm an English filmmaker, and I would like to think that the BAFTAs are important. I think they are in their own way. So I'm here to celebrate British talent today, as well as the international winners of the awards as well. I'm going to be working through that form, probably the next hour-ish or so, however long it takes to see everything that comes through this great and glorious ceremony, this ritual that we call the BAFTAs. So if you give me just a couple of seconds to open my window, because it's fucking boiling in here, then we'll get on with the very first winner. And the other thing that is important to say as well is that I won't be treating the winners as being like more or less important than each other. I mean, obviously, you know, the best film is kind of an important award, and I will be talking about it. But I'd also like to talk about some of the smaller awards like editing, sound, and short film, because that's, you know, the thing that I work in, basically. I'll be back with you in a couple of minutes after I've got my windows open and I've got a little bit of water as well. Just turn on me, folks, just getting a bit of air in. I'm just starting the stream now, folks. He back. Hi guys. I am... Is there a... My bed is made, okay? I sat over it to go and pick up some shit. Phoebe, thank you Phoebe, did make my bed earlier on, and now here it is. I mean, fucking... This is like Twitch IRL, isn't it? You guys telling me how to make my fucking bed. Pete, I don't have a link to the streaming ceremony, unfortunately. Apparently BAFTA isn't streaming it live. They did a sort of live stream of the red carpet when everyone was coming in, but they didn't do a live stream online. Seems a little bit archaic. I think it has something more to do with how they sold the rights to the BBC and how those two organisations kind of interrelate and support each other. So, let's have a look at the awards. We noticed as well that we have Joanna Lumley as our host this year. This is a difference, obviously, from Stephen Fry, who was hosting before. I don't know, I think they're sort of the same type of presenter, if that makes sense. That they're the right sort of, like, plummy Brits kind of deal. So I'm sure it's not that different. Now, like, the first award that's come through is an award that I think is often misunderstood, I suppose, which is the British Film Award. the Best British Film Award. Now, it's a bit of a weird one because it doesn't always go to something that people consider to be British, if that makes any sense. BAFTA has a set of odd criteria for what they define as Britishness. And in this case, the winner is Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. So that's a film that's set in America and is entirely populated with American actors. Well, there's one Australian character. It's a bit of an odd choice, you might think. But basically, the thing is that the movie is not only got a British writer-director, who is Martin McDonagh, who's did In Bruges and did Seven Psychopaths, but it's also a film that is funded by British money. It's a film for funded production in this instance, so it counts as being a British film. Other weird winners of that include Dark Knight kind of counts as a... I'm not actually sure if Dark Knight won, but Dark Knight was nominated for Best British Film because Christopher Nolan has dual nationality and because the film was predominantly shot in the UK. It's one of those strange additional ones there. Let's see what you're saying. So Steve, have I done enough the bed? Yeah, I should say, if I look a little bit dishevelled or unprepared, you're totally correct. I've been at the BFI, the British Film Institute, all through this week, at their amazing Future Film Festival, which is a festival aimed at young filmmakers. I stopped being counted as a young filmmaker in April when I turned 26, which will be a sad day for me, for sure, but hopefully for the BFI as well. They're missing out on more Willy Boo. But yeah, I was there all week, so I'm a wee bit frazzled about that. So how does everyone feel about the Best British Film going to Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri? Have you seen the film? I'm interested to know what you thought about that movie. I haven't done a review of that yet. I really liked it as a film, actually, more so than I was expecting. I really like In Bruges. I think that's a great movie, but I also thought that Seven Psychopaths was a little... Good stuff, Steve. I also thought that Seven Psychopaths was not the top movie from Martin McDonagh. It wasn't really him at his best. It felt like him trying to do Tarantino, almost. And Three Billboards looked like it could have been more of the same. It looked like it might have cribbed off the Coen brothers. But I loved it. I thought it was an elemental film. It was full of powerful, emotional, deep things, dealing with grotesque subject matter, and really, really toying with the idea of problematic content, basically. Yeah, I didn't do a review of it because I just literally couldn't get my head around it in time to work out what I wanted to say, essentially. When am I going to review Black Panther? That's a really good question, guys. I saw it on Tuesday. It was like a straight away thing that I saw it on Wednesday. It was a straight away thing I had to do as quickly as I could. And I found it extremely interesting, and I will be doing a video about it soon. Don't want to give away too much. But yeah, it was an interesting watch, for sure. So you'll see a review hopefully by the end of the week for Black Panther. Pete, you say that Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri was a wonderful film. The best film category is so full of excellent choices. I'm glad it secured at least this one in case it doesn't win the best film category. Yeah, that's an interesting take. I feel like, although I love the movie, I don't think it would be nominated for the amount of awards it has been if it wasn't for the fact that I think it's a relatively weak year for drama. There's definitely not that much of a standout movie, especially not one that they would give the award to, like Get Out, for instance. I think a movie like Get Out is a huge film that has kind of like dominated discussion over the course of the year and obviously made a shit ton of money as well. But it just has never been and will never be the kind of movie that is voted for by those academies. Not because of any racial issues in it, but because of its being both a comedy and a horror. Two genres that are never ever rewarded by Academy voters. I mean, barely anything ever gets nominated for anything good if it's a comedy. Even like Knocked Up and stuff got nominated for like screenplay stuff mostly. And you can see that with Lady Bird as well, where Lady Bird has been nominated for a screenplay award, but not for really anything else in the BAFTAs. Now, the next award that we're going to be looking at is a bit of a strange one. It's the EE Rising Star Award. That's basically a company based in, I think based in the UK. They're a mobile phone company. I'm not sure what the equivalent would be if you were in the States or elsewhere. But basically, it's a public voting award. It's sort of like one where the process involves the public going in and voting on who they think should win out of the nominees. So the nominees this year were Timothy Chalamet, who from Call Me By Your Name, which is, by the way, sorry, the only one of these movies that I haven't seen. I've made real efforts to go and see every single one of them, but that one passed me by. I was very busy when it came out. Tessa Thompson, who is Valkyrie in Thor Ragnarok. She's also in Selma. She's in a couple of other really good movies. I didn't love Thor Ragnarok, as any regular viewer of the channel will know. So it's not been a real standout performance for me. But she has got a good back catalogue of work behind her. Josh O'Connor, of course, made a big name for himself in God's Own Country this year. That was a film that took the UK by storm. I don't really know how it's travelled internationally, but it's a phenomenal film by a debut director, Francis Lee. Florence Pugh, who is in Lady Macbeth, which is another great movie from a first-time director, although one who's done lots of theatre. That's William Oldroyd. William Oldroyd? Yeah, Oldroyd. And then last but not least, the winner for the category, who is Daniel Kaluuya. I love Daniel Kaluuya. I've always loved him. I think he's a great actor who does lots of interesting stuff. And, I mean, he's great in Get Out. You can see my review of that on the channel. I remember Daniel Kaluuya for being in Psychoville, which is a rom-com, a sitcom turned mystery drama almost, with significant horror elements and sci-fi as well. Daniel Kaluuya is absolutely amazing in that. He plays this guy who has to look after this cantankerous old blind guy. His role is sort of completely inexplicable, but very, very funny indeed. So you can see him in a clip that I'm going to put in the live stream chat right now. I also got the chance to meet Daniel Kaluuya a couple of years ago at the Barbican, and he's a lovely guy in real life, and he still continues to be really down to earth. In fact, he did a big kind of outreach short film scheme in the UK like a couple of months ago. Niha, I'm sorry to say that Timothy didn't win, unfortunately, but hey, I mean, Call Me By Your Name is a movie that will hold the test of time, I think. The people who talk about it being great are, you know, hugely in love with it, and I don't think that stuff just goes away because it doesn't win an award. That's something I think should be said for the awards in general. They really don't go to the movie that should win a lot of the time, but being nominated in itself, I think, is usually enough to guarantee that people remember the film. Another winner here. Let's talk about the first win for what I think is probably going to be the big winner of the night, which is The Shape of Water. Alexandre Desplat, who did the music for The Shape of Water, is an extremely well-known composer. He did loads of stuff. I remember his score for Suffragette by Sarah Gavron. But, I mean, it's a fantastic score, and if you haven't seen The Shape of Water yet, highly recommend go seeing it. It's just landed in the UK. It's obviously been out in the States for a while. My review is on the channel. Do give it a look. I'm really just cracking through here. Am I going too fast for anyone? Is this really throwing people off? Is this too much? Shall I slow down? Take a chill. How you doing? How's your evening going? Happy Sunday, everybody. Desplat is obviously like an extremely well-known composer. He's done lots of really interesting and sort of not iconic. I don't really feel like he's done anything iconic. When you think about stuff like John Williams, who's got obviously Star Wars and Superman, and you've got Hans Zimmer, who's got The Dark Knight, and one of his crazy big kind of boom sounds. You have Danny Elfman and his strings. I don't really know what typifies Alexandre Desplat's work, but he's done a lot of really famous movies. He did Argo, King's Speech, The Queen, all kind of stuff like that. And he works super hard. I think he's also, correct me if I'm wrong here, he also works a lot with Wes Anderson, so I suppose he's kind of like big in that sense. Mind you, I don't really associate Wes Anderson with a super like iconic music sound either. I always think of him as being someone who uses licensed music, you know, music made by popular musicians. Sydney Sherman says, "You remind me ever so slightly of a sort of Taika Waititi." Haha. Thank you. I don't know what the resemblance is there, in fact. I'm not particularly familiar with his face, although, of course, I have seen him in What We Do in the Shadows. Do I look like Taika Waititi? Is it just because I make silly faces? I'm not quite sure. Let's have a look. Oh, he's got a kind of GQ, like, looking hot picture here. That's great. This is more like me. Oh, yeah, fuck. Google got rid of the bloody direct link to images thing, didn't they? Oh, fuck off. All right, I'm not going to send you a link to this. I'd be happy to look like Taika Waititi. I'll take the compliment. Thank you very much. So another one here. Makeup and hair. This is a thing where I think you're probably going to know who the winner is, but let's find out who the nominees are. So I'm just like making this shit up as I go along, can't you? Not my most professional, I will say. So makeup and hair nominees are Blade Runner 2049, I, Tonya, Victoria and Abdul, and Wonder. Wonder had an amazing bit of makeup in it, but it shouldn't be any surprise this goes to Darkest Hour, where Gary Oldman in extensive makeup is made to completely resemble Churchill. I hated the movie, as you can see from my review on the channel, but I think the makeup artist did a fantastic job in this, and it has to be said, it really is one of the best bits of makeup I've seen all year. It's strange as well that you haven't got something like The Shape of Water in there as well, actually, now that I think about it. It's a really good bit of production design. I don't know if that like counts, if it should be in some other kind of category. I'm not sure. Let's have a little look at what's next on the list. Just making sure I haven't missed anything big here. No, good. Okay. Costume design winner. Oh, come on. This is a no-brainer. Costume design winner is Phantom Thread, the new movie from Paul Thomas Anderson. I'd love to see what you think of this, by the way. I haven't done a review yet for the channel because I've been at Future Film all the way through the week, but I had a fantastic time watching that film, and I think it's a real movie. You know, it's a movie that really deserves to be seen, especially on the big screen. Sumptuous, funny, playful, extremely nasty, and very grim in certain places. But it should be absolutely no surprise that it wins costume design, because it is, after all, about a guy who makes the most exquisite dresses. And I have to say they're done really well. Even when some of the dresses in the film look completely appalling by current standards, they really are, you know, gorgeous constructions that are very consistent with what was popular in the early 50s when the film is set. Early 50s? Mid 50s? Let me know in the comments. Oh, I feel like I ought to slow down. I feel like I ought to give you guys more time to listen. It's good shit. Blackfire Productions says, I've been dying to see Phantom Thread, but it hasn't been playing anywhere near me. Well, fuck 'em. That's really terrible. Whereabouts are you based? Blackfire, are you in the UK? I could probably tell you where you're going. No, there's probably a place you could see it. Steve, no, this is not vodka, this is water. Thank you. I'm going to go to bed after this. You didn't miss much, mate. You missed most of the awards so far. I'll tell you what I might do, actually. I'm just going to copy and paste the names of the awards in so we can keep track of where we are with all this shit, because otherwise we're going to have trouble. Here's what we missed so far. Neha, that's a really interesting take on Phantom Thread, that it reminded you of a Roald Dahl story. I can kind of see that. There's something quite playful but also extremely cruel about everyone in the film, which is, now you mention it, is something that I do really associate with him, so that's an interesting take on it. Right, there we go. That's where we're up to, basically, Steve. Blackfire, you're based in Michigan. Can't really help you there, bud. There must be an art house cinema somewhere, but I suppose the problem is that in the UK, if you're far away from an art house cinema, you're like 2 hours maybe even from one, whereas in Michigan, I guess you're just far away from... If you're far away from an urban centre, you're really far away. You're fucking far. Is Jenna Coleman there? Do you mean in my room? No, is the answer. You can see most of my room here. Let's go through and pick another award. So the next one we're going to look at is animated film. It's something that's kind of close to my heart. I watch a lot of animation. I just don't make any animation. And it's a bit of a weird one this year because there's one film in the nominees which is Loving Vincent. Loving Vincent is a biopic about Vincent van Gogh, about, you know, his influences and what happened to him after he died. It's a bit of a strange film because it's actually got live action capture in it. They filmed a whole live action version of the film, I guess, on, I think, green screen or in very minimal sets. And then the film was painted over, quite literally, by artists. It's the first ever fully painted feature film, which is astonishing, and it took like 6-7 years to make. Just literally make, not even fund. So it's a bit of a strange one in that it has live performances in it by actual people, and it's rotoscoped in some sense, but it's in the animated film nevertheless. But don't worry, it didn't win. Coco won. This is the Pixar film about Day of the Dead. I gave a really nice review to Coco, even though I thought it wasn't amazing at times. I think it was a good movie for a family to sit down and watch, and I think that's an important thing that sometimes I forget because, you know, I don't have kids or anything, so it's not something that's necessarily straight in my mind when I think about doing stuff, do my reviews, but it's an important win. That's a bit of a one where, like, kind of any of those could have won. They would have been excellent choices. It's not really like there's anything controversial between Coco, Loving Vincent, and My Life as a Courgette. So let's look and see what the next one is. Now, are we starting to catch up? Nah, we're not starting to catch up. Okay, right. I got lost in the fucking list. Jesus. Gulp. Right, best editing. Now, this is something that no one ever talks about in this kind of stuff. I think it's super important because editing is like the third most important step of anything involved in making a film. I mean, it's like you wouldn't say writing the film or directing the film isn't important. It's extremely important, the editing. And yet sometimes it's pushed out. I remember one year watching the BAFTAs on TV and they were literally pushed into the corner. You know, when they squeeze it off and they start showing the next programme. Unbelievable. So the nominees in this quite strong category, I think, are Blade Runner 2049, Dunkirk, The Shape of Water, Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, and Baby Driver. All of those films are really strong edits. I think Dunkirk in particular has an excellent edit in it. Three Billboards, maybe. Shape of Water, yes, absolutely. And I think Blade Runner 2049 as well has a really interesting kind of flow to it. I find that all of Denis Villeneuve's films have a good flow to them, even if I wasn't a vast fan of that movie. But it will surprise absolutely nobody to find out that the winner for editing this year for the BAFTAs is Baby Driver. Baby Driver is an astonishingly well-edited film, like everything else that Edgar Wright does. It has an edit kind of in mind, you can tell almost from the way that it's filmed. So it's not surprising to me at all that that's the winner this year. I'm really glad. Cool! How you all doing? You doing okay? Is everyone doing alright? Yeah? Not falling asleep? Good. We've only got fucking half of the awards to go through. This is really tiring. I don't know how people do this kind of like as an actual job. Do you know what I mean? I guess they get paid more than me because I'm not being paid at all currently to do this. Just checking my texts. Sweet. They have a bit of a weird one. They have an honorary award that's announced in advance, which is the outstanding contribution to British cinema. This can be like a person or an institution. In this case, it's the National Film and Television School. It's funny, actually. I met loads of people there from there today, and it's still ongoing. It has an amazing reputation, and lots of famous British directors kind of worked their way up through that. And famous directors who aren't British as well, who've just come there to study. It's quite a well-regarded film school. Documentary. Let's talk about the best documentary of the year. I had the great pleasure of meeting a nominee for the documentary. Oh wait, no, she's nominated in a different category. Documentary this year is a really interesting category. It almost always is, to be fair. So the nominees are I Am Not Your Negro, Icarus, An Inconvenient Sequel, Jane, and City of Ghosts. City of Ghosts is the only one of those that I don't know anything about. I'm Not Your Negro was super popular and actually had a proper run in the Odeon, of all things, which is extremely rare for a documentary at the very least. An Inconvenient Sequel, I wasn't even interested. I think An Inconvenient Truth is probably on the worst end of documentary. It's a bit didactic, and I know it's important, but I just don't think it's that artful in the way that it communicates itself. I haven't seen the rest of them, unfortunately, but I do know a fair bit about them. But it doesn't surprise me at all to say that I Am Not Your Negro is the winner for this year's Best Documentary at the BAFTA Awards. I really wish I'd seen it when it was out. I remember there being a time when I was at the Odeon locally where I live, and I was going to sit and watch like 3 or 4 films back to back, and I just noped out at I Am Not Your Negro when it was like 1:45 or something like that, and it's like a 2-hour film, so I didn't go for it. Sorry, gang. Let me know if it's any good. I would love to see it one day. Phoebe, are you saying what's the best documentary I've seen this year? I never watch documentaries. I'm really bad at it. I tend to watch fiction, and even then I don't tend to watch fiction TV. I almost entirely watch fiction film. Documentary is quite hard to see in the cinema near where I live as well. I don't have an art house cinema nearby. There's one, but it doesn't really show that much documentary, to be fair. It's not that common for documentaries to get proper cinema releases, and I don't take the time, unfortunately, to watch them on Netflix. I'm just not good at making time for a documentary, partially because I don't make it, and there's so much interesting stuff that is being made in fiction that I literally just want to invest my time in that, which I feel like a bit of a dickhead about, to be honest. When I meet documentary makers, I met a lot of good documentary makers this week, and today, in fact, but I didn't do it. So, to answer your second question, Phoebe, also, perhaps, could you go through each award and decide which film you would have picked? No. It takes fucking forever. I will talk about that when it comes down to stuff where I feel like I know a bit more about it, like best film, outstanding debut, film not in the English language, stuff like that. But yeah, at the moment, we're talking about technical stuff that I'm not really... angry face. I'm not really that au fait with being able to judge individual technical stuff sometimes, I don't think. So... let's find out. Did I have a favourite film from the previous year? Do you know I just forget every year which films come out? I can't remember year by year. I'm just searching literally right now. You can't see it, but I'm searching films 2017. I'll just look at the BAFTA nominees from last year. Films I loved from last year, I really, really, really loved Kubo and the Two Strings. That was really, really good. Just very well made, like extremely hard to dislike in every way possible, really, I think. Short films from last year, I like The Party and Standby. In fact, I met Charlotte Reagan today, which was nuts. She's amazing and much younger than me, and that's just horrifying, but also fantastic for her. Moonlight was my favourite film of last year, I think, probably. It was just an amazing combination of something that was both very observational and very elegant and lyrical in its own way. But I also thought that Arrival was a film that should have been given a lot more attention than it was. And it's easily Denis Villeneuve's best film, which is... it's not easily Denis Villeneuve's best film. It's Denis Villeneuve's best film, which is not an easy category. You know, he's a fantastically consistent filmmaker who makes amazing work. But that is by far his best movie. Yep. How's that for an answer? What do you think? Movies that I liked last year. Thank you, Adonis. Adonis? Moonlight is an amazing film. You are correct. Should have another award, guys. Should have another look. Best short. These are the shorts winners. So best short animation and best short film. Does anyone watch short films? As a maker of short films, I watch lots and lots. And actually this year, I still haven't managed to see most of the films that are in those nominations lists. There's a couple of them that I've seen. I've seen Wren Boys by Harry Lighton. But the winner this year is Cowboy Dave. And the winner for short animation is Poles Apart. I love animation. It looks so good. I didn't see Elle. I heard good things. Yeah, I feel like Arrival just didn't get that many awards. I mean, it did get a lot of attention, quite rightly. It just didn't win that much. Especially Amy Adams got passed over a lot. I find it really weird that people didn't see her as being like this incredibly good emotional performance in a film that would have completely floated away without her pinning it down. She was phenomenal in it. Cool. So those are the shorts winners. I always like mentioning them. I feel like people sometimes forget that there are short filmmakers trying to get into their career and make new work. One of whom is me. I haven't made a BAFTA-nominated film yet, fingers crossed. But let's find out. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those movies, it's one of those awards that kind of gets pushed down, I think, in the rankings quite a lot. And that's a bit of a shame, really. Let's crack on while we're still here. Now, this is a category I really like. Film not in the English language. And Phoebe, I will talk about a film that I think should be in here. So, these are the options. The Handmaiden, Elle, First They Killed My Father, Loveless, and The Salesman. So, yeah, Elle was nominated here, Steve. Loveless has only just come out in the UK, so I haven't managed to see it yet. I didn't see First They Killed My Father either. My dad watched it and told me he thought it was good, but too American. He said he thought Angelina Jolie had fucked it up slightly. The Salesman I haven't seen either. What I can say is there's one movie here that isn't here that I would like to have seen here, which is I Am Not Madame Bovary. It's a Chinese language film that's phenomenal and really a powerful comedy, which is a rare thing. It's quite a dark comedy, but it's powerful. Might even make quite a nice kind of like opposition film to Three Billboards now that I think about it. But you should check it out. I Am Not Madame Bovary is available on Amazon Prime, at least in the UK, so it's worth having a look at. And it's interesting because the majority of the film is actually presented as a circular image, so there's just a circle in the middle of the frame, and that's the kind of aspect that everything is framed through. It does change a little bit throughout the movie, but it's a really interesting visual approach. However, the film that is winning this year for the film not in the English language is a film that I absolutely adored when I saw it at the cinema, which is The Handmaiden. The Handmaiden is just crazy. It's Park Chan-wook. Park Chan-wook you will know as the director of Oldboy. He made Stoker, which is an English language film that was kind of not that great. He made quite a few other movies as well back in Korea. This is another Korean film. It's actually an adaptation of a British novel, which is really interesting. So, yeah, The Handmaiden is a movie that just veers over the course of its almost 3 hours from really hot erotica to extremely disturbing drama to quite well-observed comedy, while also delivering a historical story about Japan's occupation of South Korea, of Korea in general, before the split. It's just a movie that makes the mind fucking boggle. And one of my favourite things about it was that there was a group of middle-aged ladies sitting in front of me watching it, and they just, when the final frame went up, they just cackled. They just sat there and laughed and laughed and laughed, which I thought was really bizarre, to be honest. Sydney, to answer your question about The Martian, so the BAFTAs don't define films as like musical or comedy in official categories. The Golden Globes did that for The Martian. I think that's really weird that The Martian was mentioned as a comedy. I don't remember that, actually. I only just saw The Martian. I saw it a couple of weeks ago. I find it totally bizarre. I don't know why they would consider it to be that. I think the companies that make the film submit them and basically decide which categories to put them in on. And then there are like eligibility categories, eligibility committees that decide whether or not they fit those categories. So it's not just weird that it was submitted as a comedy, but also that it was considered to be a comedy by the eligibility committee. It's a really bizarre thing. I know there's a similar controversy this year about Get Out, where people were a bit angry that it had been put as a comedy instead of as a like a drama, I suppose, like a social issues film. I think as much as I get that the themes raised by Get Out are really important, the film is a satire first and foremost, and I think you're diminishing comedy if you're saying it can't be that. It's almost like the other way around is true of The Martian. I don't know, it felt like they thought it wouldn't compete as a drama, like they thought it wasn't capable of sustaining interest as a drama, so they decided to define it as a comedy, which I think is, you know, wrong too. I think that's a bad idea in itself. Okay, best adapted screenplay winner. Let's have a look at the nominees for that. So the nominees for this include Death of Stalin, which I saw and really liked, which is adapted from a graphic novel. Paddington 2 is in here, a film which inexplicably I think most of the UK has seen, which I suspect has not been seen by other people. Let me know if you are one of those rare people who really, really likes Paddington 2 in the US. I don't know if it's had a huge run over there or not. Molly's Game is an adaptation of a true story written by the person who is the lead character, I suppose. I haven't seen Film Stars Don't Die in Liverpool, so I can't talk about that. And I also haven't seen Call Me By Your Name, which won this year's Adapted Screenplay Award. It's an adaptation by James Ivory of Merchant Ivory films, the really famous old period movies from the 80s. Merchant Ivory is... James Ivory is super old. Ismail Merchant's actually dead, but James Ivory is like in his 80s, and yet he wrote this really light, lovable story about homosexuality blossoming and growing. And I think that's a wonderful thing. I think that's kind of nice. It shows that there's weirdly not an age barrier on either side of it. You've got a really young lead star, and then you have quite an old screenwriter. It's a really interesting thing. Blackfire, you saw Blackfire. You saw Paddington 2, but you didn't see... Your local cinema in Michigan is showing Paddington 2, but not Phantom Thread. That's so bizarre. Well, good for them, I suppose. Oh, that's so weird. I don't understand that an American filmmaker would make a film about Britain and it wouldn't show in Michigan, but a British filmmaker would make a film about Britain and it would show in Michigan. Very strange. Niha, yay. Don't worry, Call Me By Your Name I think is going to win a fair amount. So you should be okay. Now, next up is our supporting actor category. This features Christopher Plummer, who infamously replaced Kevin Spacey late on in the post-production really, of All the Money in the World. The film itself is not great, so I would be surprised if he gets a win for that. I think he did fine in it. Hugh Grant is nominated for Paddington 2. Really? What the fuck is wrong with the BAFTAs? Willem Dafoe for The Florida Project. Again, this is a film that I really wish I'd been able to see, and it just kind of came and went in my local cinema really quickly at a time when I was very busy, so I failed to see it. Luckily, living in London, there's a lot of cinemas that will pick up these movies again around the awards season and play them, so I'm hoping I can catch another screening of that. And then we have Woody Harrelson for 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. In this case, he loses out to his co-star, Sam Rockwell, in 3 Billboards. Good for him. I thought his performance was absolutely stunning. It's weird that he counts as being a supporting actor. I think he's almost got a case for being the main character as much as Frances McDormand's character does. Thanks supporting. Thanks Adonis. I will try and see Florida Project. It's kind of interests me, and Tangerine was really, I don't know if I'd say great, but very fresh and kind of clever in the way that it approached filmmaking as much as its story that it told. Okay, now the next one is production design. Production design is an interesting and sort of like mercurial idea that I think people don't always notice. Almost if it's done really well, you might notice it, but a lot of the time it might just be what it is. Production design has a couple of nominees. It's one of those things where it almost always goes to a big budget movie because it means they have more money to show off. We have Dunkirk, Darkest Hour, Blade Runner 2049, Beauty and the Beast, and The Shape of Water. I think Blade Runner 2049 had absolutely stunning production design. It was a gorgeous looking film. in terms of the world that they built. You know, I wasn't wild about the movie, but I think the world building in it is unbelievably good, and it's a testament to the production designer's partnership with Roger Deakins that it looks as amazing as it does, because the cinematography and the production design play so well together. I mean, they play flawlessly together. Yeah, no, here, it's interesting that you're saying the Florida Project has a good colour palette. I really like the way that they brought that across in the marketing as well. I think there was good posters for that film that really helped push it a bit. So the winner for this year's Production Design Award is The Shape of Water by Guillermo del Toro. Well, the production designers are other people, but I think people always think of Guillermo del Toro's movies as being production design led by him. I think he's a director who has a very strong idea of what production design is in his films. He's famous for having huge notebooks of like scrap paper references, little drawings, and backstory that he made for everything in his worlds. So it wouldn't surprise me at all that he'd win for that. Shape of Water is beautifully production designed. So yeah, that's one where I thought Blade Runner 2049 had a really good chance, but it's not particularly surprising that production design was won by The Shape of Water. I think it was a gorgeous film, and more importantly, I think it was a film that Academy members wanted to sit down and watch, which I think has really played into its favour. So in the category for special visual effects, again we have The Shape of Water, as you might imagine. The Shape of Water has a wonderful main character who's brought entirely to life using visual effects and makeup, prosthetics, stuff like that. Star Wars: The Last Jedi. I mean, every year these movies impress. I think this film was fantastic. War for the Planet of the Apes. Now, I was blown away by the CGI in War for the Planet of the Apes, and I think it was a film that almost didn't get as much appreciation as it ought to have. It was an extremely weird blockbuster and very nihilistic, much like Logan, I think, in that respect. But the thing that really just made me think, I suppose, about how I view computer graphics and how they work with filmmakers was looking at how Caesar and his pals, his ape buddies, interacted with their world. I think it was an absolutely stunning, just amazing integration of technology and filmmaking in that sense. I mean, I just forgot that I was looking at that, even in close-ups of apes digging, stuff like that. Dunkirk, I think, is a little bit less of an obvious choice. I know they did lots of interesting stuff with like 3D printing soldiers out and things like that, which I think are great ideas that are really well thought through. Oh. Hello, am I still here? All the computer graphics and how they work with before I go, I'm just going to go check my internet is not completely fucking up, but it will become as no surprise to see that Blade Runner 2049 has won the Special Visual Effects Award. I think the way that the world building interacts with the production design, the way that the CGI interacts with the production design to build the world of the film is absolutely phenomenal, and I think it's one thing that should really be commended about that movie. One thing that I absolutely love in it. Right, just going to go check out about my internet. Okay, so my Wi-Fi is inexplicably poor. No one in my house understands why this is the case. I can see the KBS, the kind of like upload speed, just dropping completely to 0 at certain points. So do not be surprised at all if there ends up being lots of problems like that. So sorry about that. Do stay with me in the comments and stuff. So let me know. I've just remembered my mic was off, so I've turned it back on again. I said some really cool stuff about how good the sound in Dunkirk is, but you didn't hear any of it, so just fill it in yourselves, I think. Just think about those amazing clock ticks and how cool they are. Oh. Original screenplay winner. So let's have a look at the nominees for that. So original screenplay is kind of an interesting category. I think it's sometimes where they put the weirder films. It's sort of like an acknowledgement that the film is good and worthy of winning something, but not necessarily a promise to give the film any other awards. So we have two of the big losers, really, of the BAFTAs versus the Oscars, which is Lady Bird and Get Out are both in this category. That's obviously Greta Gerwig and Jordan Peele, respectively. I, Tonya, The Shape of Water, and Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri are also nominated. And it's one of those awards where actually everything in there is a great screenplay. I think it's very hard for a film to be made and considered in this standard without also being a very good original screenplay, with the exception of maybe craft stuff like Blade Runner 2049. I mean, I think that even a movie like Baby Driver has an amazing screenplay, even if it's not maybe the first thing that comes to mind when we think about the film and what's good about it. So it will not come as a surprise to find out that Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri won the Best Original Screenplay award today. So now we're into the bigger awards, the kind of ones that people really think about when they think about these big award ceremonies. Let's talk about cinematography. I think cinematography has kind of become more popular recently. I think maybe the advent of stuff like Instagram and things like that have really made people think a little bit more about the technical stuff behind the film, especially when it comes to the visuals. It's kind of one of the showier things that someone can do. So we have nominees here: Darkest Hour. I didn't rate how that was shot much in particular. The Shape of Water, a beautiful film. Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. I think that's a really gorgeous movie as well. I actually had the pleasure of meeting Ben Davis, who's the cinematographer, last year, also at the BFI. We then have Hoyte van Hoytema, a great name and very much a fun name to say as well. Did cinematography for Dunkirk, as well as, of course, Interstellar, and his collaboration with Christopher Nolan is an ongoing one that I think has yielded fantastic results. I think Dunkirk is a beautiful looking film. But I'm very glad to say that someone who is often the bridesmaid and very rarely the bride, Roger Deakins, has won cinematography for Blade Runner 2049. Now, Blade Runner, like I keep saying, is a film that essentially isn't, that good in lots of ways. It's certainly the worst film that Denis Villeneuve's ever done. But you can't doubt for a second that the way that the film, visually speaking, brings itself to life, brings the world of the characters to life, both through the production design and through the cinematography, is unparalleled, I think, this year. Watching that in the IMAX was just an overwhelming sensory experience. I think Roger Deakins is a great example of how someone can get super big and still be an incredibly innovative and clever, creative as they continue to grow. I really love his films. I look forward to seeing his movies. So the Best Actor award is out, and that is, no surprises, I think, Gary Oldman as Winston Churchill, just, you know, rocking that chub suit. This is versus a pretty interesting kind of group of people, but I think he was always a bit of a forerunner. It's a bit of a shame that Timothée Chalamet didn't win, but he's very young. And I think sometimes we forget that the BAFTAs and the Oscars are more about know and recognise than they are maybe about an actual standout performance. So, again, something that won't surprise anyone who's been looking at the awards as they go through is that Frances McDormand is the winner for leading actress. I really like Frances McDormand. I think she's had a full and busy career and done some amazing roles. But I think this one really stands out. It's a very hard role to get right. She's sort of an unlikable woman in lots of ways, and yet she's right in lots of ways as well. I think that's a tough thing for people to, a tough line for people to sort of tread along. Now we're getting to the really, really big awards. This one here is Best Director. Best Director nominees this year are Guillermo del Toro for The Shape of Water, Denis Villeneuve for Blade Runner 2049, which, by the way, I think if any of them are going to go, I think, you know, if we could pull one of them out and put someone else in, maybe a female director, then I would probably choose Denis Villeneuve. I think he's a really, really good filmmaker, Denis Villeneuve. He makes amazing work, and yet Blade Runner 2049 is not reflective of that work. I don't think it's a good movie in lots of ways. Call Me By Your Name, Luca Guadagnino, yeah. Luca Guadagnino is the director of Call Me By Your Name. He's nominated for Best Director. Chris for Dunkirk, and Martin McDonagh for Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. Three Billboards is one. I think Martin McDonagh has often been a better writer than he has been a director. I actually think Three Billboards is a really well-directed film that he does a phenomenal job of. Checking that I'm still online, by the way. Guillermo del Toro, Best Director for The Shape of Water. We feel good about that? I think he does a phenomenal job, and, you know, it's not my favourite movie of his. I think he's done better films in some ways, but it doesn't change the fact that his career is one that's worthy of being recognised, I think, as well. He's a really clever filmmaker who has continue to change, innovate, and, you know, decide new and exciting things that he wants to do. And I think that's great, brave, cool, even. Something that should be rewarded. Best Director, Guillermo del Toro, The Shape of Water. Not a surprising one, again, I think. That's sort of something that people thought would be the case. And last but not least is the Best Film winner. Best Film nominees are Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, Call Me By Your Name, Darkest Hour, Dunkirk, and The Shape of Water. Any guesses? The winner is Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. Cool. Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri is a great film that deserves a win. And that now means that basically we've got 5 BAFTAs for Three Billboards, 3 BAFTAs for Shape of Water, and Darkest Hour for 2. It's interesting, I'm reading the BBC live stream as well, and the writer, who is either Stephen McIntosh, Annabelle Rackham, or Ian Youngs, says that the bookies odds for the main 7 awards, acting, best film, best British film, and best director, have all been won by the favourites, essentially. So it's sort of a predictable BAFTAs, I suppose, in some ways. A BAFTAs that didn't surprise anyone, but nevertheless, a BAFTAs. It'd be interesting to see how that reflects what happens in the Oscars as well. I think sometimes the Oscars goes for bigger, more showy films, and I think that The Shape of Water is one of those movies, much more so than Three Billboards. I think Three Billboards is a small film in some ways. And I also don't know how receptive the Americans are going to be of its pretty tough treading of the line between like humour and pain. I mean, pathos, you know, is all over the place in that film. It also plays with the grotesque as well. Right, folks, I had loved doing this. I had a great time. I'm sorry about the Wi-Fi being so shitty that you haven't been able to see me talk or whatever over the course of some of it. I hope to get that sorted out for next live stream, which is, you know, at the start of March, for the Oscars, the big one, where I'll be wearing my bow tie. Possibly, maybe, probably. I'm going to stick around for about another 15-20 minutes in the live chat. I'm going to leave the placeholder image up so we can continue to have a chat about the films in the comments. Hopefully that'll be a little bit less laggy than watching me talk. But it's been wonderful having you. Thanks for looking at the channel, and don't forget to click subscribe if you aren't already subscribed. And of course, keep on watching my reviews. You'll see my review for Phantom Thread, for Black Panther, and maybe for Three Billboards. Maybe for Call Me By Your Name if I can find it. Hopefully in the next couple of days, the next couple of weeks. So keep an eye out, and I'll see you later. Bye for now, folks.